Welcome back to the first crossover Thursday edition of the 2024 season. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. Glad to be joined by Sarah Bettinger of Locked On Broncos. A special thanks to all the 12s and Broncos fans out there for making Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Broncos your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNFL and use the code, all lowercase, LockedInNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game. Seahawks and Broncos, week one. Former AFC West rivals battling at Lumen Field, both looking to get off to fast starts. And obviously, as you mentioned earlier, Sarah, a lot of newness for both teams, different degrees of newness. Obviously, the quarterback situation in Denver, the new coaching staff in Seattle. First time Pete Carroll isn't on the sideline since way back in 2009. So there's plenty of big changes for both these teams going into a game that creates a lot of uncertainty in week one, more so than there already is. Week one is always kind of a wild card when it comes to what you're going to see of the preseason, how limited the starters typically are for teams in the league. Now, let's get to the most important things for both teams to accomplish to win this football game. And we'll start with the visiting Denver Broncos. And Sarah, you mentioned all the newness, particularly with Bo Nix, first NFL regular season start. He gets to go to one of the loudest venues in the NFL. Not an easy test, but when you look at this game from a Broncos perspective, what are the three most important things that are jumping out to you that Denver has to accomplish to get out of Lumen Field with a season opening win?
Well, I think number one, you want to see Bo Nix get into rhythm and keeping him in rhythm, especially when they're, mixing the run in the pass game. Number two, you want to see the Broncos defensive front putting pressure on Geno Smith early and often. And number three, seeing this young secondary stepping up, which against this Seattle Seahawks wide receiver group, that could end up being one of the most key matchups of the game, because we know Pat Surtain, he can hold down his side of the field. But on the other side, the Broncos do have some question marks. It could be Riley Moss, a second-year player out of Iowa, out there at the cornerback position. It could be the veteran Levi Wallace getting some more playing time this week as the Broncos kind of try to acclimate Riley Moss into the mix, because he hasn't played outside corner at this point yet in the NFL, aside from a couple of preseason games. So that to me is one of those situations to where we know the Seahawks have guys who can make plays at wide receiver and they can spread the ball around. Do the Broncos have the guys that can keep up with them in coverage, especially because of their youth back there, not only at corner, but at the safety position, where PJ Locke taking on a full-time starting role this coming season after kind of having a breakout year last year for the Broncos, and Brandon Jones coming in free agency from the Dolphins. A lot of Broncos fans concerned about Brandon because he was injured in OTAs. He was hurt throughout training camp in the preseason. We have not yet seen Brandon Jones play a game as a member of the Denver Broncos. So this week one, assuming he plays, this will be the first time we all see number 22 out there. And so it's going to be a very interesting sort of experience for everybody in real time to kind of figure out what is Vance Joseph's new look secondary going to be able to do against maybe what could be their biggest test of the season in terms of Seattle's personnel.
The Broncos want Bo Nix to get comfortable. They want him to get in a rhythm. The Seahawks want to do the exact opposite in this game. They want the crowd noise to get to the rookie. They want the pass rush to get after him. But to me, most importantly, put everything on Bo Nix's shoulders. Don't let the Broncos get their run game going with Javonte Williams and company, because that is the best way to come into Lumen. And Seattle's run defense has been god-awful the last 2 years. They've been 30th and 31st in the NFL the last two seasons. Mike Macdonald's hoping to immediately come in and remedy that issue. And so far, the returns have been promising. But you've got to limit the run game and put everything on Bo Nix's plate. To me, that's the first key for the Seahawks in this game. Force Bo Nix to beat you in his NFL regular season debut. If he ends up doing it, then more power to him. But force the young quarterback to have to shoulder the load and beat you. And then on the offensive side of the football, it's going to seem very elementary, but you got to keep Geno Smith upright in this game. You mentioned the talent that the Broncos have on their defensive line. That is probably my biggest concern on either side of the football coming in this game, because Seattle doesn't have Abraham Lucas back yet from his knee injury. We don't know if Connor Williams is going to be available to play in this game coming off the torn ACL. Signs are trending towards him being available, but there are a lot of question marks still on that offensive line. It isn't going to matter if Jackson Smith and Jigba is ready for a breakout year, or Tyler Lockett still can get it done, or DK Metcalf is poised to go for a team record in receiving yards. None of that matters if Geno Smith does not have time to throw the football. And so that is going to be a big question here, because if he has time, if the Seahawks offensive line is able to protect him, he's able to stay upright. As you mentioned, I do think if there's an area the Seahawks have a big advantage, even against Pat Surtain, DK Metcalf had success against him a couple years ago. That is one of the few receivers that creates a little bit of a matchup issue for Pat Surtain. And the rest of the secondary's got a lot of question marks. Seattle does not have question marks at receiver. They are loaded there. Even their number 4 and 5 receivers, Jake Bobo and Laviska Shenault, are really good football players. They've got a lot of weapons, but Geno Smith's got to have time to throw. If they give him that time with the home crowd behind him, I think Seattle has a chance to put a lot of points on the board, but that is a big question mark. Are they going to be able to do that? And then at home, you got to win the turnover battle, especially when you're playing a rookie quarterback making his NFL regular season debut. It's elementary, but you got to win the turnover battle. This is a defense that Mike Macdonald in Baltimore orchestrated that created a lot of havoc with their pre and post snap changes, with the complexity of the defense, the blitzes and the sim packages, all different levels of the defense. They're looking to create turnovers. And that was something the Baltimore Ravens were as good as anybody at the last couple of years. So the Seahawks going to be able to pick that up with some of the talented players they have up front. And in the secondary, this will be a little bit of a litmus test going against a rookie quarterback and an offense that's got some question marks with some of the pieces they're trying to implement. So can you win the turnover battle? I think if they win the turnover battle in this game, their chances of winning go up exponentially, because I do feel like the Seahawks have a little bit more continuity and a little more proven experience at a number of positions. But again, it boils down to O-line protection. And are you going to be able to get some of those turnovers to get some quick changes, get the ball back into Geno Smith's hands and try to get some points on the scoreboard quickly? Looking at this game from a FanDuel perspective with our betting lines, the Seahawks coming in at 5.5-point favorites at home. Over-under's a little on the lower side at 41.5. I'm not really that surprised by that, Sarah, because we are going into the game with a rookie quarterback making his first start in Denver, so there's some question marks there. And even with Seattle, with all the talent that they've got, you've got a new offensive coordinator, and so nobody really knows what to expect in the regular season. So I'm not surprised it's on a little lower end in terms of over-under. But from a prediction standpoint, we'll dive into scores on our Friday shows, respectively, on Locked On Seahawks and the Locked On Broncos. But 5.5 points, underdogs. Do you see the Broncos covering that, or do you see this being a game where that 5.5 ends up being difficult for them to cover?
I do think they can cover that. I think this Broncos team is going to be better than a lot of people expect. We're used to hearing the number 5.5 from FanDuel this offseason, as that's the Broncos win total projection as well. So I've been smashing the over on 5.5 all offseason long, and I'm just glad the over-under is not set at 50.5, because 43 and 8, those two numbers combined together, that still inflicts a little bit of terror in the hearts of Broncos country there. But I do think the Broncos can cover 5.5 points. I think they're going to be a better team overall than is expected this year. That doesn't mean they're not going to get their butts kicked every now and again, but I think they're going to be able to hang in this game, and we'll see what happens in terms of win-loss. But I think they are going to be playing everybody tight this season.
There is not a game on the schedule that's more unpredictable than week one, and that's just for all 32 teams. You just don't know what to expect. And I look at this game, look, I have really high expectations for what this Broncos team could become down the line. And I think in week one, you never know what you're going to get. So 5.5, that might be a little bit rich for me right now for the Seahawks, even playing at home, because there is a lot of newness for both these teams. So I don't have them covering that. Now, does that mean I have them winning or losing? You'll have to listen to tomorrow's episode to find out. But I expect that this is going to be a tight game. I think the Denver Broncos have more talent than people are giving them credit for. In fact, I could see Denver, if things fall right, being the second best team in the AFC West, because I think the Chargers have questions. The Raiders certainly have questions. So I could see this being a team, if everything falls right for Sean Payton, that ends up being much better than advertised. Not saying it's a playoff team, but certainly could be a team that rises up the division standings and starts to pave a brighter future moving forward after the last couple of years just didn't play out as planned. But I do think this is going to be a very close game, and I expect it's going to be back and forth. Week 1 is crazy as it is.